Last year, the Knicks looked like a promising young team led by the newly hired Tom Thibodeau. The Knicks were thriving. Thibodeau originally got the job because Knicks GM Leon Rose at the time said that he was a proven winner and someone who would help instill a winning culture into the franchise. But it is also worth mentioning that prior to being the Knicks GM, Rose was Thibodeau's agent, and they were and still are good friends. Even with Thibodeau's track record of success when coaching the Chicago Bulls and the Minnesota Timberwolves, most people still believed it would take a few years to obtain that success in New York. Coach Tibbs, however, led a team that had not made the playoffs or had a winning record in 8 years to a 41-31 record, which was good enough for the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, giving the impression that the Knicks had found their coach for years to come. Much of this success can be attributed to Thibodeau being able to get the best out of his players, particularly their star and leader last year, Julius Randle. Before the 2020-2021 season, Randle, although very talented, was considered by many to be inconsistent, inefficient, and people even questioned his ability to play a winning brand of basketball. Last year, however, with the help of his new coach and in the final year of his contract, Randle had the best season of his career. Randle's value over replacement player last season was more than double he had had any year prior, and his win shares, which estimates the number of wins contributed by a given player, was better than players like Jason Tatum, Chris Middleton, and even Luka Doncic. The Knicks also had RJ Barrett, who last year, in only his second year in the league, improved in every single offensive statistic, including improving his scoring by over 3 points per game. And right next to him was Immanuel Quickley, who as a rookie averaged over 20 points per 36 minutes played. Thibodeau was also able to get the best out of his team defensively. They were ranked 3rd in defensive rating last year, and they held their opponents to the 2nd lowest effective field goal percentage in the league. This year, however, it seems that the promising young team that everyone watched last season was a one-hit wonder. The Knicks finished this year with a 37-45 record, which put them in 11th place and 6 games out of even making the play-in tournament. This year, they've been scoring less per game and shooting lower percentages from the field and from 3, while their opponents have scored more per game and have had higher shooting percentages this season compared to last. Randle has also been unable to match his incredible play from a season ago, as seen by his win shares and value over replacement players being less than half of what they were last year. Thibodeau's Knicks were incapable of matching the 41 wins that they achieved in a 10-game shortened season a year ago. Now, in order for the Knicks to thoroughly improve their team for next year and beyond, they need to make changes, and that all starts with ending Tom Thibodeau's New York coaching career. Tibbs' style of defensive and slow-paced games is not the way the NBA game is going. Pace is a statistic that estimates the number of possessions a team has in 48 minutes, or also known as the length of a regulation game. And pace in the NBA has been generally increasing since the late 1990s. Thibodeau's coaching style, however, has led his team to be ranked 30th and 27th in pace, whereas of the past 5 NBA champions, all of them were in the top half of the league in pace, and 3 of them were in the top 5. Known as a defensive wizard, Thibodeau's defense this season ranked outside the top 10 in defensive rating. It's just not nearly high enough to overcome an offense that for the past 2 years under Thibodeau has struggled immensely and has been ranked outside of the top 20 NBA teams in offensive rating. Last year, the Knicks were ranked 3rd in defensive rating, and this year almost every player's defensive win shares has decreased, showing an overall regression in their play, which led them to be ranked 9 spots lower. Now, the argument against firing Coach Thibodeau is that he has a track record of success, and the Knicks have problems that need addressing that are far worse than he is. For example, since the start of the 2013-2014 season, which was the last time the Knicks won a playoff series, the Knicks have had 6 different head coaches, and none of them have lasted more than 2 years. In that time period, the Knicks have also had 5 different lead executives. So it could be argued that stability at the head coaching position is needed. But that raises a question as to why have stability when it only results in diminishing play. It's also easy to say that this year the Knicks have had injuries and players struggling, and that is the cause for their disappointing season. But Coach Thibodeau is tasked with adjusting to those struggles and adjusting to those injuries to keep his team afloat. For example, Julius Randle's downfall this year has played a role in the Knicks' struggle. But it's also on Thibodeau that he couldn't adjust his offense to allow young players like RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, who have been performing very well, to be more involved. It also seems clear that Randle's new contract may have overvalued him, and the Knicks might have made a poor choice in paying him so much money. As for injuries, it's something that throughout his coaching career, Thibodeau's teams have struggled with. This year, Derrick Rose and Nerlens Noel stand out as the two who have missed extreme portions of games because of injury. Thibodeau's known for playing the people that he likes a lot of minutes. And while there's no true way to say that Thibodeau is to blame for his players being injured, his track record just shows a continued problem. Although Rose and Noel both have histories of missing games because of injuries, Thibodeau can be faulted for pushing those players to play a lot of time and wearing their bodies down. When you look back on his time in Chicago and in Minnesota, many people questioned when D. Rose got hurt why he was playing so many minutes, especially in games that were blowouts. Many people also believe that Tibbs ran his former player Luol Deng so far into the ground that when he got traded to a new team, he could barely play. Another example is in Minnesota, when Zach LaVine was on pace to lead the NBA in minutes played by far, but that season was cut short for him because of a torn ACL. Thibodeau has a clear history of pushing players to the extreme, and sometimes it even goes too far. When we look at the Knicks' struggles in close games, we see even more problems. In clutch moments, which is defined as the last 5 minutes of an NBA game that is within 5 points, the Knicks have a net rating of almost negative 22, where many times the offense is stagnant and results in difficult shots like this. To make matters worse, in clutch moments, Thibodeau's team has a defensive rating of 117.4, which is 4th worst in the NBA. That's unacceptable for a coach who hangs his hat on the defensive side of the court. Meanwhile, teams atop their conferences, like the Suns, Warriors, Heat, Bucks, Grizzlies, and Raptors, are all inside the top 10 in defensive rating during clutch time. And lastly, there's a clear disconnect between the Knicks front office and their head coach. This is also something that Thibodeau has struggled with in his past coaching positions. In Chicago, he was immediately fired following their 2015 playoff exit, and it was cited that he didn't welcome or value input from all parts of the organization. And then in Minnesota, Thibodeau was fired mid-season, in part because of his handling of Jimmy Butler's problems with the organization and with other players. The famed practice that Jimmy Butler embarrassed franchise players in Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins happened under Thibodeau, and he reportedly did nothing to solve or address the problems. Now, in New York, we see fractures in the relationship between Thibodeau and the organization. Kemba Walker was signed last offseason to a 2-year deal worth a little less than $18 million to help boost the Knicks offense. Walker this year, though, has struggled with consistent playing time because he's not a fit for the defensive scheme that Thibodeau wants to play. A former star player for the Charlotte Hornets, Walker struggled last year with the Celtics, causing them to trade him, and he's also struggled this year with the Knicks. Walker's win shares the past 2 years have been the lowest since his rookie year, Even with those struggles, though, Walker's win shares per 48 minutes are higher than those of Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, meaning that the Knicks should have been able to find a role for him. However, an agreement was made between Walker and the Knicks, and he has not played in a game since February 14th in order to prepare for next season. To make that disconnect even more apparent, at the trade deadline, the Knicks front office traded for Cam Reddish, with the hopes that his talent would elevate the Knicks' play. The Knicks' trade for Reddish was also for the possibility that the immense talent Reddish has will allow him to flourish in a bigger role and even become a star. It also helped that Reddish had familiarity playing with Barrett for a year together at Duke. However, quickly after the trade, rumors surfaced that Thibodeau was against it, and to prove those rumors true, he rarely played Reddish, who many argued deserves solid playing time on the Knicks. Coach Tom Thibodeau is stuck in his ways, and he refuses to adapt to an ever-changing and more offensive NBA as his team continues to be ranked outside the top 20 NBA teams in offensive rating. That is why, going forward, Coach Tom Thibodeau should be fired. The Knicks need to adapt to the newer NBA, and the best way for them to do that is to find a new coach. But what do you think? Should Knicks head coach Tom Thibodeau be fired? Be sure to subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments.